So you're planning to build your first epoxy table. Where do you start? What do you need? In this first part video, I'm going to show you exactly how we build all our epoxy tables. Let's go. So you're planning to build your first epoxy table and you don't know where to start. In this first part video, we are going to be discussing preparation, designing, and how to build your mold for your epoxy table. And within the next few weeks to come, we are going to launch video number 2, where we will be going into detail on how to cast your epoxy, curing times, sanding, and the finishing and oiling stages of your epoxy table. Now, before you continue watching this video, there's another video I posted about 2 weeks ago where I went into much more detail on epoxy mistakes. You might want to go and check that out and then continue watching these videos. And the next bit of information I want to share with you, it's now September 2021. In October, our DIY with Greg website will be live. What does that mean? It means that all our previous projects we posted on YouTube, drawings will be available for you to download, and for all our future projects to come. But I have some very exciting news I also want to share with you. I am currently drawing up a complete information data sheet, every single thing you need to know on how we build all our epoxy tables, where I will be going into intense detail, every single thing you need to know from start to finish, and I will be sharing all my knowledge, research and experience with you, putting it on a data sheet for you to download. You want to make sure to follow us on all our social media platforms, Instagram and Facebook. I will be leaving a link down in the description where you can find us. We will be obviously announcing once our website is live on our social media platforms. Without any further delay, let's get into today's project. And the absolute first thing you want to do is to make sure that your wood is properly dried. What do I mean by this? You need to make sure there's no moisture inside your slabs. Now, I did make a video last week going into a lot of details on moisture content in your slabs. I am going to leave a link now. You need to go and check that video out first before you continue watching this video. Those steps I'm explaining in that video is insanely critical before you build your first epoxy table. So now that we know our slab is dry, we're going to move to the next step. And that's by making sure our slab is flat on top and at the bottom. What do I mean by this is, in the drying process of a slab, natural cracks will occur and your slab will twist and bend by itself. This is the drying process. And there's 2 ways you can flatten your slab. I will leave a link now where we built a previous table and built a router sled where you can do this manually. Or luckily for us, we are in a fortunate position of having a supplier close by where we take all our slabs to be flattened on a CNC machine. Now that we know our slab is dry, then we're going to move on to the next step by removing all the bark. What do I mean by this is, you want a strong bond between your epoxy and your wood, and the bark is going to prevent a strong bond between your wood and your epoxy. We use a chisel and a hammer to remove all the bulkier pieces of bark on our slab. And then we're moving to wire steel brushes. Now, we like to use Storecraft brushes. There's 2 brushes I would recommend. The first brush is a very aggressive brush. This will remove 95% of your bark. But it will also make small little lines on your live edge. That's why we are moving to the second steel wire brush. This is a less aggressive steel wire brush. And this will remove all the markings your first wire brush has made on your live edge. Now that we know our slab is dry, it's been flattened and all the bark has been removed. Now we're going to move to the designing part of your table. And this is the part of the project we absolutely love. It's to see your epoxy table comes alive. There's 3 methods you can use in designing your epoxy table. The first method is building a frame to the exact size your finished table is going to be. And then you can place it over your slab and get a good idea of how your end product will look. The second method is using your computer. Photoshop, for instance, and cut your slab on the computer and place it in the direction you would like your epoxy table to be, and then you can have a good idea of how your end product will look. The third method is the one we like using the most, and having your mold already cut to the table's final size, and placing your slab on top of the table and marking on the slab with a black marker. Remove your slab and then you have a good idea of how your table will look. Let me show you how we do it. So this is basically how it's going to look like and the method we like using in designing our tables. So we will send a picture like this to our clients and get their approval. But this is basically how it looks. So I sent this design to our client and they absolutely loved the design. Now it's time to move on by cutting our slab. That's a very easy part. You can use your plunge saw, your track saw, or in my case, I'm just using my circular saw. Now we're going to move to the last section of this video, and that's building a mold for your epoxy table. We like to use white melamine wood to build the molds for our epoxy tables. And as you can see in front of me, this mold is way too big for the epoxy table we're building. Why are we doing this? As an epoxy manufacturer, we can't cut individual sheets for every single table because we can use this sheet 3 to 4 times. And why we like to use this wood is the epoxy can't penetrate into the wood due to the sheet it's got on top of the chipboard. Now you can use superwood, but then you have to buy the tape, so your epoxy is not going to penetrate into the wood. I'm going to explain to you how we build our molds for all our epoxy tables. The first tip I want to give you is always build your mold slightly bigger, lengthwise and widthwise. Why do we do this? If you're going to build a mold to the exact finished size of your table, there's absolutely no room for error. That's why we build our molds a little bit bigger so we can cut our table to its final size later on. The next tip I want to give you is the side walls you're going to put up for the epoxy table. You need to build them slightly bigger than your slab. If you're going to do a deep pour and the epoxy is going to run over the slab, this is going to prevent your epoxy from falling out. Another thing I want to share with you, when you're going to put up the side panels, always apply a layer of silicone in this corner. This is just to prevent the epoxy from leaking out. Now the other question we also receive a lot is, what are we using to apply on the white melamine sheet? And it's called ram wax. It's just a very thin layer of wax you need to apply to your melamine sheet, and this is going to prevent your epoxy from aggressively sticking to the white melamine sheet. So this is basically how you build a mold for your epoxy table. I am going to leave a link now of a previous table we built where you can see how I built the mold for the epoxy table. So this is going to be part 1 for how to prepare, design and building a mold for your epoxy table. I honestly hope this information is going to help you to start to build your first epoxy table correctly. Now within the next week or 2, I will be launching part 2 of this video where I will be going into detail on how to cast your epoxy, curing times, sanding and the finishing processes for your epoxy tables. Now before you go, help us grow our channel and help me to produce future content. How can you help? Make sure you like this video, subscribe to our channel. It's honestly just helping with the algorithm and it's going to help us to grow. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. If you got any questions for me, leave me a comment down below. I will respond and I'll see you next week. Thanks guys. Cheers.